The house that kept secrets. The moment I found my mother's hidden journal, I realized that everything I believed about my family was a carefully constructed lie, and someone was willing to destroy me to keep the truth buried forever. I am standing in the kitchen of my childhood home, surrounded by boxes and dust and 47 years of memories that suddenly feel like fiction. My name is Margaret Chen, and 3 days ago, I buried my mother. 2 days ago, I discovered she had been living a double life. And today, I found out that my entire existence was built on a foundation of betrayal so deep it makes me question whether I ever really knew anyone at all. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the moment when my perfectly ordinary life shattered into a million pieces. My mother, Rose Chen, died on a Tuesday. She was 82 years old, and she passed peacefully in her sleep at Maplewood Nursing Home, where she had spent the last 3 years of her life. The nurses said she went quietly, with a small smile on her face, as if she was finally letting go of something heavy. I thought I understood that heaviness. I thought it was grief for my father, who died 15 years ago, for the life she had lived, for the daughter who visited only on Sundays because work was demanding and life was busy, and there was always tomorrow. Except now there was no tomorrow. And I was left with a house full of her belongings and a guilt that sat in my chest like a stone. My brother, David, couldn't come to help sort through everything. He lives in London now, with his perfect wife and his perfect children, and the flight was too expensive, and his schedule was too full. He sent flowers to the funeral and a check for his half of the estate expenses, as if our mother's life could be divided so cleanly down the middle. So it was just me, alone in the house where I grew up, touching things that still smelled like her lavender perfume, and trying not to cry every time I found another photograph of us together. I started in the living room, then moved to the bedrooms. By the third day, I had reached the attic, a space I hadn't entered in over 20 years. The attic was exactly as I remembered it, dusty, cramped, filled with boxes labeled in my mother's neat handwriting. Christmas decorations. Baby clothes. Tax documents 1985 to 1990. Everything organized, everything in its proper place. Except for one box hidden in the far corner, behind an old wardrobe, covered with a cloth as if someone wanted it to disappear. The box had no label. I pulled it out, my heart beating faster for reasons I couldn't explain. The tape was yellowed and brittle, easy to break. Inside, I found something I never expected. Letters. Hundreds of them, tied with faded ribbon, written in handwriting I didn't recognize. A journal bound in cracked leather. Photographs of people I had never seen before. And at the very bottom, a birth certificate. My birth certificate. Except it wasn't. The names were wrong. The date was wrong. Everything was wrong. I sat on the dusty attic floor and read the name on that certificate over and over again, hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something that made sense. Baby girl, Eleanor Frances Whitmore. Mother, Catherine N. Whitmore. Father, unknown. Date of birth, September 14th, 1977. I was born on September 14th, 1977. But my name was Margaret Chen. My mother was Rose Chen. My father was James Chen. This certificate said otherwise. My hands were shaking as I opened the journal. The first entry was dated March 3rd, 1978. I have done something I can never undo. I have taken a child who is not mine. I have renamed her. I have claimed her as my own. I have told James she is ours, and he believes me because he wants to believe. Because we have tried for so long to have a baby, and the disappointment was killing us both. Her real mother is dead. Her real father never wanted her. She was going to be placed in foster care, shuffled from home to home, forgotten by everyone. I could not let that happen. I saw her in the hospital nursery, and I knew she was meant to be mine. So I took her. I changed her records. I paid someone to help me. I know it was wrong. I know I am a criminal. But when I hold her in my arms, when she looks up at me with those dark eyes, I cannot feel anything but love. God forgive me. I hope she never finds out. I read those words, and the world tilted on its axis. I was not Margaret Chen. I was Eleanor Whitmore. My mother was not my mother. My entire life was a lie. The hours that followed were a blur. I sat in that attic until the sun went down, reading every letter, every journal entry, every fragment of a truth that had been hidden from me for 47 years. The letters were from someone named Catherine, my biological mother. They were love letters, written to a man named Richard who apparently didn't love her back. They told the story of a young woman who got pregnant at 19, was abandoned by her family, and died from complications during childbirth. Catherine never even got to hold me. Rose, the woman I called Mom, had been a nurse at the hospital where Catherine died. She had watched Catherine suffer alone, had witnessed her desperation and her fear. And when Catherine was gone, Rose made a choice.
She stole me.
Not with malice. Not for money. Not for any reason except love and grief, and the crushing weight of her own empty arms. The journal entries chronicled everything: the bribes to hospital officials, the falsified documents, the move to a new city where nobody knew them, the years of paranoia every time a stranger looked at me too long. Rose loved me. That much was clear from every word she wrote. She loved me fiercely, completely, devotedly. She agonized over her decision every single day of her life. But she also lied to me every single day of her life. I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know who to be angry at. I didn't know who I was anymore. I might have stayed frozen in that confusion forever if I hadn't found the last item at the bottom of the box, a letter addressed to me, in my mother's handwriting, dated 1 week before she died. My dearest Margaret, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have found my secret. I have carried this burden for 47 years, and now I must pass it to you. I am sorry. I am so deeply sorry. But there is something else you must know. Something dangerous. I was not the only one who knew the truth. Richard, Catherine's lover, your biological father, he found out about you when you were 3 years old. He came to our house. He threatened to expose everything unless I paid him to stay silent. I paid. For years, I paid. Every month, a portion of our savings went to that man to keep him quiet. When your father James died, I thought the payments would stop. I thought Richard would leave us alone. But he didn't. He kept demanding more. And when I had nothing left to give, he told me he would come for you instead. Not to claim you as his daughter. Richard never wanted to be a father. He wanted to control you. He discovered that you are entitled to a substantial inheritance from Catherine's family, the Whitmores. They never knew Catherine had a baby. They never knew you existed. If the truth comes out, you will inherit everything. And Richard wants that money. Margaret, I hid this from you because I was trying to protect you. But I was also a coward. I should have told you the truth years ago. I should have trusted you to handle it. The Whitmores are still alive. Catherine's parents, your grandparents. They live in Riverside, 2 hours from here. They are old now and alone. They lost their only daughter, and they never stopped grieving. You have a family, Margaret. A real family. And they deserve to know you exist. But be careful. Richard is dangerous. He has spent his entire life manipulating and deceiving people. He will not let you claim that inheritance without a fight. I love you. I have always loved you. Please forgive me, Mom. The next morning I did something I never thought I would do. I got in my car and drove to Riverside. I didn't call ahead. I didn't know what I would say. I just drove, clutching the birth certificate in my hand like a talisman, trying to imagine the faces of grandparents I never knew I had. The Whitmore house was beautiful, a Victorian estate set back from the road, surrounded by ancient oak trees and flower gardens that had been lovingly maintained for decades. It looked like something from a fairy tale, the kind of place where happy families gathered for Sunday dinners and holiday celebrations. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, unable to move. Finally, I forced myself to walk to the front door and ring the bell. The woman who answered was small and elegant, with silver hair and eyes the exact shade of brown as my own. She looked at me, and something flickered across her face. Confusion, recognition, hope. "Can I help you?" she asked. "My name is Margaret Chen," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I think I think my real name might be Eleanor. Eleanor Whitmore." The woman's hand flew to her chest. Her eyes filled with tears. "Catherine's baby," she breathed. "You're Catherine's baby." The next few hours were the most emotionally overwhelming of my life. Eleanor Whitmore, my grandmother, who insisted I call her Eleanor, sat me down in her living room and held my hands and cried. Her husband, George, sat beside her, silent and shaking, looking at me as if I were a ghost. They told me about Catherine, about her dreams, her laugh, her kindness, about how she fell in love with the wrong man and refused to listen when they warned her, about how she disappeared when she got pregnant, too ashamed to come home, too proud to ask for help. "We searched for her," Eleanor sobbed. "For years we searched, but by the time we found out she had died, you were gone. The hospital said you had been placed with a family, but there were no records. It was as if you had vanished into thin air." "We never stopped looking," George added, his voice rough with decades of grief. "We hired private investigators. We contacted adoption agencies. We did everything we could think of. But we never found you," Eleanor finished. "Until now. Until today. My granddaughter. My beautiful granddaughter." They embraced me like I was something precious, something long lost and finally returned. And for the first time since I found that box in the attic, I felt something other than confusion and anger. I felt like I belonged. But the peace didn't last. 3 days after I met my grandparents, I received a phone call from an unknown number. "Margaret Chen?" a man's voice asked. Smooth, confident, dangerous. "Who is this?" "My name is Richard Hale. I believe you've been looking into your family history." My blood ran cold. Richard, the man who had blackmailed my mother for decades. The man who wanted my inheritance. "What do you want?" I demanded. "I want what I've always wanted," he replied. "What's owed to me?" "You see, Margaret, or should I call you Eleanor, I spent 18 years supporting your mother when she was pregnant with you. I gave her money, a place to stay, everything she needed. And when she died, I was left with nothing." "You abandoned her," I shot back. "She died alone because of you." "That's a matter of perspective. The point is, I have documentation that proves my relationship with Catherine. I have evidence of my financial support. And I have a very good lawyer who believes I have a legitimate claim to a portion of the Whitmore estate." "You're lying." "Am I? Perhaps. Or perhaps your saintly grandmother isn't as innocent as she appears. Perhaps the Whitmores knew exactly what happened to you and chose to leave you in poverty while they lived in luxury. Have you asked them about that, Margaret? Have you asked them why they never tried harder to find you?" He hung up before I could respond. His words echoed in my mind for days. I tried to ignore them. I tried to focus on building a relationship with my grandparents, on healing the wounds of 47 years of separation. But doubt had been planted, and it grew. I started asking questions. Gentle questions at first, then more pointed ones. "Why didn't you find me sooner?" I asked Eleanor one afternoon. "You said you hired investigators. You had resources. Why couldn't you find a baby that was stolen from a hospital?" Eleanor's face went pale. She looked at George. A silent conversation passed between them. "There's something we haven't told you," she finally admitted. My stomach dropped. "When Catherine died," George continued, "we were contacted by someone at the hospital. A woman. She told us she knew where the baby was, where you were. She said she had taken you to protect you from being placed in the system." "Rose," I whispered. George nodded. "We didn't know her name then. She was very careful. But she told us you were safe and loved, and that if we tried to find you, she would disappear with you forever. She said we had failed Catherine and we didn't deserve you." "We believed her," Eleanor said, tears streaming down her face. "We believed we had failed our daughter. We believed we didn't deserve a second chance. So we let you go. We told ourselves it was for the best." "You gave up on me?" I said. "We thought we were doing the right thing," George replied. "We thought. You let a stranger raise me while you lived in this mansion. You had everything, and I had nothing." "We sent money," Eleanor cried. "Every month, For years, we sent money to a trust fund for you. Rose was supposed to use it for your education, your future. What trust fund? I demanded. I never saw any money. We lived in a tiny apartment. We shopped at thrift stores. My mother worked 2 jobs just to keep us fed. Eleanor and George exchanged another look, this one filled with horror. The money, George whispered. All that money. Where did it go? The answer came 3 days later, when Richard Hale appeared at my grandparents' door with a team of lawyers and a folder full of documents. The money, hundreds of thousands of dollars that the Whitmores had sent over the years, had been intercepted by Richard. He had discovered the arrangement, had posed as a representative of Rose Chen, and had been collecting my inheritance for decades. Rose never knew. She thought the payments she received were blackmail demands. She thought she was paying Richard to keep quiet. In reality, he had been stealing from both of us. I want what I'm owed, Richard said calmly as he sat in my grandparents' living room. I've calculated interest and adjusted for inflation. The total comes to approximately $2.3 million. You're insane, I said.
I'm realistic.
You can fight me in court if you want. It will cost you millions in legal fees and take years to resolve. Or you can pay me what I'm asking, and I'll disappear forever. Get out, George growled. Richard smiled. I'll give you 1 week to decide. He left, but his presence lingered like poison in the air. That night, I sat alone in the guest room of my grandparents' house, staring at the ceiling and wondering how my life had become so complicated. I thought about Rose, the woman who raised me, who loved me, who lied to me every day of my life. I thought about Catherine, the mother I never knew, who died alone and afraid. I thought about Eleanor and George, the grandparents who gave up on me, who let their guilt consume them. Everyone had made choices. Everyone had their reasons. And none of those reasons changed the fact that I was the one who had been hurt by all of them. But I was done being a victim. I was done letting other people's decisions define my life. I picked up my phone and made a call. The next morning, I met with Eleanor and George and told them my plan. Richard has been stealing from this family for 40 years, I said. He's blackmailed, manipulated, and deceived everyone he's encountered. But he's made one critical mistake. What mistake? Eleanor asked. He underestimated me. I showed them the evidence I had gathered. Bank records, forged signatures, falsified documents. I had spent the entire night digging through Rose's papers, cross-referencing them with the Whitmore's financial records, building a case that would
destroy Richard Hale.
This is fraud, I explained. Wire fraud, mail fraud, identity theft, extortion. These are federal crimes. If we take this to the authorities, Richard doesn't just lose his claim to the money. He goes to prison. George stared at me with newfound respect. You figured all this out in one night. I'm an accountant, I said with a small smile. Numbers are my language. The confrontation came 1 week later, exactly as Richard had demanded. He arrived at the Whitmore house expecting a check. Instead, he found 2 FBI agents waiting for him. I watched from the window as they put him in handcuffs, as they read him his rights, as they took him away in the back of a black sedan. He never looked back. The trial lasted 6 months. Richard fought every charge, hired expensive lawyers, tried every trick he knew. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. I sat in the courtroom when the verdict was read. I thought I would feel triumphant, vindicated, whole. Instead, I felt empty. Richard's punishment didn't bring back the years I lost. It didn't give me a childhood with grandparents who loved me. It didn't erase the guilt Rose carried to her grave. It didn't change the fact that my entire life had been shaped by other people's lies. But it did give me something I had never had before. The truth. 1 year later, I stood in the garden of the Whitmore estate, surrounded by family. Eleanor and George had welcomed me fully, completely, unconditionally. We had dinner together every Sunday. We looked at old photographs of Catherine. We told stories and laughed and cried. I had discovered relatives I never knew existed, cousins, aunts, uncles. The Whitmore family was larger than I ever imagined, and they had embraced me without hesitation. I had also made peace with Rose. Not forgiveness, not entirely, but understanding. She was a woman who made impossible choices in impossible circumstances. She loved me the best way she knew how. And in the end, she left me the truth, even knowing it would destroy the image I had of her. That took courage. That took love. I planted roses in her memory in the Whitmore garden. Every spring, they bloom in vibrant shades of red and pink and white. Every spring, I think of her. My name is Eleanor Frances Whitmore, but I still go by Margaret. It's the name I grew up with, the name my mother, both my mothers, called me with love. I am not defined by the lies that surrounded my birth. I am not limited by the secrets that shaped my childhood. I am not trapped by the mistakes of the people who came before me. I am the daughter of Catherine, who died too young. I am the granddaughter of Eleanor and George, who waited too long. I am the child Rose Chen raised with imperfect, complicated, profound love. I am all of these things. And I am finally, fully, completely myself. Some houses keep secrets. Mine kept a lifetime of them. But secrets, like houses, can be opened. They can be aired out. They can be transformed into something new. That's what I've done. That's who I've become. A woman who survived the lies. A woman who found the truth. A woman who built something beautiful from the ashes of everything that burned. And when I look in the mirror now, I don't see a victim. I don't see a stolen child or an abandoned baby or a deceived daughter. I see Margaret Eleanor Chen Whitmore. I see myself.
And that is enough.
The end. Your support means a lot to us. If you like this story, please like, subscribe, and share to help us grow.